A decade ago, the gaming industry consisted of a handful of indie games, with monthly Steam releases barely reaching double digits. The games that were released were dwarfed in comparison to the AAA giants of the time, like Rockstar, Blizzard, Ubisoft, and Nintendo. However, fast forward to the present, and indie games account for 31% of the market share by revenue. According to Convoy Ventures, which is a capital investment firm focused on gaming, indie games have carved out a significant niche within the gaming industry and challenged the dominance of AAA titles, a statement backed by the decreasing market divide between AAA and indie. So, come with me as we follow the monumental rise of indie games. Back in the 2000s, the biggest obstacle for indie developers was technology. Hardware wasn't as advanced as it is today, while also not being as readily available. Naturally, this came as a disadvantage when against large AAA companies. Despite this, indie developers could still get their hands on powerful PCs. The real killer was software. Creating a game from scratch was extremely difficult. While it was possible, and in some cases allowed for incredible optimizations and creativity, it drastically narrowed the market for indie game developers. You had to have an extensive background in software and computer science in order to even think about contributing to the small niche. However, everything was about to change. In 2001, Unreal Engine 2 was released to the public, which drastically lowered the entrance bar to create 3D games. Soon after, in the month of June 2005, a cross-platform game engine by the name of Unity was released to the general public. Both game engines allowed small teams of developers to efficiently and easily develop games. As stated by a Forbes article about indie studios, engines and workflow tools have empowered creative minds to experiment, iterate, and innovate with unprecedented ease. These two events didn't cause an immediate or drastic change in indie game sales, but that was all for good reason. Despite increasing the complexity of game development by several factors, it still took time to learn the ins and outs of each game engine. Even after that, starting a project takes time, and games started in the early 2000s would release a few years later. On top of all of this, content creators on various platforms began to create in-depth tutorials on how to use and create games in the new and upcoming game engines. Brackeys, a well-known YouTuber, began posting his easy-to-follow tutorials more than a decade ago, and has single-handedly helped millions of people discover game development. He's one of the few pioneers who further decreased the skill required to enter the industry. As we get closer to 2020, games rapidly increase in complexity, depth, graphics, storytelling, and sound design. This makes developing a successful and unique game extremely difficult and time-consuming. But more importantly, game development has become expensive. Indie studios are struggling with two notable issues: marketing and funding. For the longest time, marketing an indie game was extremely expensive and swallowed large portions of indie budgets. In addition, AAA studios that had the revenue could easily overshadow an indie game when it came to exposure and marketing. This problem was indirectly solved with the massive rise of social media. Platforms like YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, and TikTok have allowed thousands of developers to show the internet projects that they've been developing. These forms of social media are entirely free, and in some cases can even act as streams of revenue for these studios. In addition to marketing, funding is also a major issue for indie developers. A lot of devs don't make much money until they release a successful game, so until then, they mostly relied on themselves to support development. However, funding has become much more developed and widespread, with platforms such as Kickstarter, Patreon, and Indiegogo providing many developers with life-changing amounts of funds. In fact, Kickstarter alone has reportedly funded around $613 million to video game-related campaigns. Many publishers have also become much more open and supportive of funding indie games, as the niche has proven its capabilities and potential for success over the past few years. All of the factors I've mentioned in this video, like marketing, funding, game engines, and tutorials, have created an industry in which creativity is more valuable than anything else. Indie games find success by exploring new genres, presenting unique game mechanics, and investing players with their unique charm. For example, games like BattleBit introduce a unique experience with huge maps, large player counts, and a huge amount of features. Despite being at the cost of graphics, BattleBit has still solidified itself as an indie success story, making around $44 million in gross revenue. Other games, such as Pacific Drive, introduce an incredibly unique driving system and vibe, allowing them to rake in approximately $6 million in gross revenue. Because of advancements in video game creation, the value of creativity is higher than ever, balancing the playing field between AAA and indie. In addition, good graphics are no longer about the realism of your game. Stylization, minimalistic graphics, and color theory are all being used in indie games today to create an aesthetic appearance without wasting days to create realistic assets. However, on the note of realism and graphics, it's worth mentioning Unreal Engine. The graphical capabilities of UE5 are absolutely astonishing, with many videos trending online displaying the capabilities of the engine and the effortless realism you can now achieve. This allows indie devs to save time, effort, and resources in their pursuit to create games with a high level of graphical fidelity. Even engines considered to be weaker graphically, such as Godot, are now giving rise to beautiful 3D games, a great example being Road to Vostok. A few years ago, games like this would have been considered groundbreaking and revolutionary, but recent advancements in both hardware and software have brought these games to life. The indie scene is rapidly changing, with each passing year giving rise to more and more incredible indie games. Today, the indie game development niche is a tightly woven community of developers and gamers alike. I'm very familiar with YouTube and love watching the hundreds of creators who share their development journey with the rest of the world. Indie games are constantly ranking among the top games in terms of popularity and have found their place in the gaming industry. Steam receives an average of 500 indie games a month and 6,000 a year, growing the indie niche far past AAA games. In fact, as of 2021, more than 95% of games released on Steam are indie. On that topic, I'm developing one myself, and if you'd like to join the development journey, feel free to subscribe. With that said, I'll see you in the next one.